Okay, thank you for extending the invitation to me. It's just another fine lesson on It's All Who You Know that I was able to come down. I do have a pretty strong background for documentation, for insurance, and for Medicare. I'm David Smith. I'm a chiropractor in Harrisburg. Many of you already know me as Shannon's husband, and that's how I'm mostly known in Pennsylvania as well. My daughter Brianna invited me down. She thought that it would be a good idea for people that are getting out of clinic and into the real world. I'm a 1982 ADIO graduate, so Sherman is very close to me. My first philosophy instructor was Reggie Gold, if you can believe that, gingivitis. And my first terminology instructor was Christopher Kent. I got to see him at lunch today. He looked very different then, and marveled that I did too. I'm a professional with ADIO, so I am pretty conservative, lifelong member of the ICA and the FSCO, which has become the IFCO in later years. Also, from the time I got my license, I've been a member of the Chiropractic Fellowship of Pennsylvania. I am presently the president, probably the president for life. If I lose that presidency, it'll be the same way Hugo Chavez did. In that, who else wants the job? Yeah, it's just one of those things. But I enjoy working with Sherman, and I've been down a lot more since Brianna's here. Today, cash practice. Do we all love a cash practice? Would we all love to be in a cash practice? It is the easiest way to go. However, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I believe in South Carolina, most states it's the same, you cannot accept cash from somebody that was in an automobile accident or a slip fall, a PI. Anybody that's a workers' comp, you cannot accept cash from them. You had a great maintenance patient the last 10 or 12 years. And after they got hurt at work, they had to go down the street to somebody else because you don't accept that, or you don't do the documentation for that. Or they were a great patient from age 55 to 64 years, 11 months. And on that 12th month, they went under Medicare Part B, which covers chiropractic, but not maintenance care. Will you document for what they cover and know their definition? Because the definition of maintenance care isn't Joe Strauss's definition, who was my second philosophy instructor, and it wasn't Don Harrison or Deed Harrison's definition of maintenance. B.J. Palmer, doesn't matter who it is. We have to go by Medicare's definition. I want to keep you within the law because Medicare, PI, and workers' comp, Medicare and PI and workers' comp, very strictly regulated. They don't cover maintenance, and it's not that difficult to work with those so that you don't lose those patients. You can usher them back in. In South Carolina, who is the Medicare carrier in this area? Anybody know? Is anybody a practicing doctor? You're all students. You're all dressed like students. Okay, good deal. All right, you're not allowed to raise your hand. You're not dressed like a student. So, do you know the 3 levels of CPT codes for chiropractic adjustments? 98940, 1 to 2 regions, 98942, 3 to 4 regions. Nobody's going, yeah, I do. Somebody has to do, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. In South Carolina, for Medicare, what's the reimbursement for a 98940? If it's active treatment, how much do they pay? Does anybody know? Does anybody know? I looked it up because it's on the internet. Isn't everything? $27.44. That's 1 to 2 regions. If it's 3 to 4, it's $39.68. Now that's if you're participating with Medicare. If you're non-participating, I'm going to explain all these later on. If you're non-participating, the lowest level is $26.07. That means they paid you cash, but the federal government will reimburse them 80% of 2607, and if they have another insurance company, it'll do the other 20%. But there's limitations on that as well. That's for a very simple case. You'll have to know the definitions of active treatment, what they cover, how many regions, but I'm going to go through that today. The reimbursements are very generous. Just a few housekeeping rules. Silence your phones, please. I do these talks all the time. If you're in the front row and you have to get up and move around, it's not going to bother me. I do this all the time. I do, however, have 3 banned phrases. One is you're not allowed to say Dr. Kolaric violated it already. Was it not so much that you said? I think it was. So we've already started off on the wrong foot. You're not allowed to say 110% unless you really mean 110%, like how many votes were cast in the Detroit precinct? Well, 110% of registered voters. Then you're allowed to do it. You may not say awesome, even at a TLC seminar. You may not say awesome unless it's really awesome. A tornado, I can see it. It's heading right towards us. We're all going to die. That is an awesome sight. Up to that, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to use that. Everything that's important today, I will say it 3 times. Questions will be limited until we get to the end. At the end, I will take every question in the universe. But what's important, I will say 3 times. Nobody gets this much detail in their notes when I lecture. Nobody does. You guys have a really good background. So I'm going to start with Medicare and chiropractic with the general overview. Then we're going to go into overall insurance. Then we're going to get to the real nuts and bolts of Medicare. So I'm going to go through the generalities, introduction and generalities in the first hour. So let's go to, not what I was using for the warm-up, that was the lame band. We should be able to go to, oh, right there, how do you find that kind of stuff? There you go. Medicare rules, 2017 for Sherman College. There was a mandatory claim submission. Oh, they're Medicare now. I can just get a payment from them and give them a receipt and they can figure it out. No. It has to be accurate and it has to be on a HCFA form and you have to do it for the patient. There is a limiting charge. A Medicare overcharge measure is what it's called in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now in 1990 when it was first put forth, it was to get Governor Casey elected. That's Senator Casey's father. In any case, what they did was they defined overcharge as anything more than what the Medicare fee schedule was. Now, everybody knows, does Medicare pay really well or that's not the fee schedule you want? So their definition they redefine. They call it the MOM law, Medicare overcharge measure. It has since been superseded by a published limiting charge. So you're not allowed to charge for covered service by Medicare over a certain fee. In South Carolina, for example, for a 9940 1 to 2 regions, it's capped at $29.98. If your regular fee for a very simple 2-region adjustment is $30, you have to reimburse 2 cents because you can only collect $29.98. 3 to 4 regions, $43.36 is your capping fee. These are very reasonable charges, at least in the area where I live. These are very reasonable charges for what we do. Participating versus, and the limiting charge, all that's available on the internet except when it's not. When is it not? When they're fighting over the budget. You might have a 6-week, 8-week, 12-week until the budget's passed before you know what you're allowed to charge. That really hasn't happened in the last 8 years, but in the past it has. Participating versus non-participating. That ring a bell with anybody? If you are participating with Medicare, you agree to their participating fee. In South Carolina, it's $27.44. You will not charge the patient ahead of time. You will get paid directly by Medicare. They make it very easy for you. They make it very easy for you. Non-participating means you're going to charge the fee that you want to charge Now it's limited, like I said, there's a limited charge. And when you send in the HCFA form, the patient gets reimbursed a certain amount for what they paid out to you. But because you're non-participating, you can operate your practice the way that you want to, other than that limiting charge. Assignment versus non-assignment, that's short for assignment of benefits. If you have the patient sign and they give you assignment, they assign the benefits, that the check can come to you. If you're a participating provider, that already includes assignment. If you're non-participating, you can collect it and be non-assignment, or you can be not participating and have the patient assign the benefits, so you still get the check of 80% of that amount that's allowed, and then any difference they would pay to you. Assignment of benefits, the insurance company gives the check to you. Participating, you're cooperating with the insurance company to follow their rules, not yours. Generally, I'm going to go through this again later, for most insurance companies, is it better to be participating and go by their rules, or non-participating and have your own rules? That's right. Non-participating is the way to go. Medicare is an exception in that they give you more appeal rights. And, like I said before, their fee schedule is very generous for how most people practice. I am a cash practitioner, other than assignment for Medicare, because they cooperate so well and you have more appeal rights, and I've never lost one. PI, because you're not allowed to collect cash for an automobile crash. Plus, it's one of those things that rhyme. Workers' comp, you are not allowed. It's highly regulated in my state and every other state. There's one more insurance company, our biggest Blue Shield carrier in Pennsylvania, that they make it so nice I can't help participating. Everything else, it's my rules. It's my rules. I can take my ball and go home. Click. When you bill, it must be on a CMS 1500 form. It used to be a HCFA form. For chiropractors only, there are some specific rules that others don't use. Specifically, box 14, where they say it's a date of first treatment, date of illness, injury, or LMP, you have to put in the first treatment. Is there anybody here that has actually seen with their own eyes a red printed CMS form? You don't count. You don't count. Hey, you saw it too. You know what else he saw? The CMS forms? He wasn't paying attention. Powderly was in my office as well. He couldn't get past the concept that I still use floppy disks, and they work. And don't worry, I got lots of stories, but we're not going to go late because Matlock comes on at 9, and I'm not taking any chances. When you actually go through and submit these forms, what I have here makes sense. For tonight, I'm not going to worry about it. First diagnosis for Medicare, because what does Medicare need before they'll pay you? You have to have a subluxation. Are these great rules or what? One is a subluxation. Indeed, if they're going to pay for it, you also need a symptom. If there's no symptoms, they don't pay. Patients allowed to pay out of pocket, but it's not paid for by Medicare. So you need, for each region, 2 diagnoses. One of a subluxation. In the M99.0X format, like an M99.00 would be an occipital subluxation. M99.03 would be a lumbar subluxation. But there's another format of subluxations that are more for traumatic subluxations. You need this particular format, and I'll show you the right place to look for that. There's modifiers to the codes that you use. I'll go over a little more detail, but just to get you started, the AT modifier stands for active treatment. It's only used for Medicare. When you have an active treatment, 98940, you put AT. GY, that's a modifier only to be used by Medicare. It's an item or service statutorily non-covered. Why? The only thing Medicare covers are adjustments. They don't cover x-rays. They require an x-ray or physical exam, but they don't cover the x-ray and they don't cover the physical exam. Then why do you have to send it in? Some patients have a comprehensive insurance that what's denied by Medicare, they will cover. But when you send it in, don't let Medicare pay it by mistake. Put a GY modifier. GA, only to be used by Medicare. GA means that you knew it wasn't going to be covered. You had to sign an ABN. A is for ABN. And that ABN said this is a maintenance treatment. This is a maintenance treatment. Medicare will not cover. If you let them know ahead of time, they may pay for maintenance. The patient is allowed to pay for maintenance. Why do you have to send it in? It's not a covered service. You only have to send it in if the patient requests. And there are some insurance companies out there that pay for maintenance. There's the, what is it, the Sasquatch insurance company out in Pittsburgh. That's a joke. Sasquatch, Yeti. It was funnier in New Jersey and in my head. An obscure steelworkers, union steelworkers plan outside of Pittsburgh. Indeed, when you send this in, they get reimbursed. They get reimbursed for maintenance. Click. ATGA, that's when it's an active treatment, but they've gone more visits than what Medicare is likely to pay in a year, but you think it's still medically necessary. You have them sign an ABN saying, this is active treatment, I'm going to send it in, but they might not cover. And then, if it's denied, you can appeal it until they finally come around, because I'm going to show you the right way to keep your notes so that you know when you're right. And they don't get an explanation of benefits that says, oh, well, we don't cover this. You didn't have them sign one of those advanced beneficiary notices. Don't use the GA modifier all the time. That'll throw up a red flag, even though you're not really sure when they're going to pay and when they're not. Medicare has a phrase that says, you're not allowed to tell the patient, we're not really sure when Medicare is going to pay and when they're not. So don't do it. Don't have them sign the advanced beneficiary notice every time. That will get you targeted for extra scrutiny. I generally, when I have more than 20 visits in a calendar year, I'll have them sign that. Now I'm more like 27 visits. When in early 2000, 2001, 2002, they started asking for notes after only 12 visits in a calendar year. But they didn't tell you how many visits they were going to do. Now almost all states, they don't question what you do until about 30 visits. Almost all states. I don't know which state you're going into, and if 2 years from now you say, hey, Dave, they're not flagging us till 38, not call, what's that called? What's the interweb thing? There's a, is my email address any place on here? Usually the cover on my notes has that, but let me know, because I get information from all over. Yeah, Dr. Cleric said you were rude to him earlier in the week. He was the one doing this for the sound check. Everybody else got one, I'm just saying. So I usually wait till 27 visits or so, because that's the way that it is. But originally it was, it could be as low as 12, and it really varied state to state. Now, all the visits I'm talking about are active treatment. It is much more common that the patient has been brought up to maintenance before those 20. And in 2015 and 2016, I only had one patient that was more than 30, and it was still active treatment. 2014, 2013, I had two, and actually one of them needed more than 50 treatments. But according to Medicare, they were valid by their definition, and I just appealed it and appealed it and appealed it and got paid for more than 50 visits. Very complicated cases, but it's, if you know the rules, then you know how to document it that way. Page down. Medicare is very clear on covered services and documentation standards. Download your local coverage determination, which GBA, Palmetto GBA, does not have it easily available on the website. So there is a national coverage determination, an NCD, and we'll go through that. But more importantly, at a federal level through cms.gov, you can go to the Medicare Learning Network, MLN Matters, SE 1601, SE 1602, and SE 1603. That will have everything that I tell you about Medicare in it. Tonight, that will have it in their own words and their own documentation. If you go before an administrative law judge and say, well, Dave Smith said blah, 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 he will or she will laugh out loud very heartily. But if you say, well, according to SE 1602, I don't have to have that third diagnosis, even though it is a complication, you will win and you will get paid with interest. There's nothing better than getting interest from Novitas Solutions. Really, it's Navitas, but Novitas sounds like new pain. I like to pronounce it that way. They must have a significant health problem in the form of a neuromusculoskeletal condition necessitating treatment. It must have a direct therapeutic relationship, provide reasonable expectation of recovery. Do they have to get better? Do they have to get better? No, they don't. Powderly cheated. No, they don't. If they had a quadruple bypass and died on the table, does Dr. Kildare get paid? He does. No, Kildare, there really was a show called Dr. Kildare. It was the Richard Chamberlain, who was in every miniseries, even the Thornbirds. We're going back a long time. Yeah, way, way, way back. Your patient, you need an expectation of improvement, but you don't have to have improvement, and Medicare still covers. A reasonable expectation. It gets even better. So, as long as they have a demonstrable subluxation of the spine, you are golden. There's two kinds of subluxations, acute subluxations and chronic subluxations. I'm going to give you the full definition later on, but once the clinical status has remained forgiven, then they can go to maintenance care. Now, it must be clear if they're an acute subluxation, a chronic subluxation, or maintenance care, and you have to have all of the documentation requirements met. In addition to that, give the phase of treatment, which is really how many treatments for the condition that you're treating. An acute subluxation, would that be fewer visits over a longer period of time or a more intense in the first month? What do you think? More intense. And then for a chronic subluxation, it's going to take longer. I x-ray in my office. I've got degenerative joint disease at 3 levels. Spondylolisthesis. I've got eburnation, end plate irregularity, lipping and spurring and osteophytes. Oh my. Do you think I'm going to say, oh, that's an acute subluxation or that's chronic? So if you take x-rays, you're always going to find a lot more chronic. If you never take x-rays, you get a lot more acute. Medicare doesn't care. It's what you document. It is your clinical judgment. Page down. So, documentation requirements, they're extensive. They're not a burden. Any abbreviations are allowed as long as there's a legend to decipher them. If your claim is denied, you go through and appeal, appeal, appeal. If you don't appeal in 2016, when it's a 30-visit limit, what happens in 2017? They make it a 25-visit limit. What happens in 2018? They make it a 20-visit limit. When I started, it was 12 visits. And I did these seminars all over on how to appeal and what to do. And it went up to 16 and 18 to 20. And then by 2010, their local coverage determination, which gave all the documentation requirements, were the same references that I used in my classes, especially on the legend on how to put all that together. So, don't sit back and suck your thumb. You really can change it, even on a federal level. Go ahead for our next one. Now, does anybody here know anything about insurance? I mean, you've been pretty busy with things that really don't matter. I mean, it's been a long time since for this part, it's been a long time since I was in chiropractic school. I think I only had to remember like 68 elements in the chart. And back then, I think there were only 192 bones. How many do they teach now? It's like 196 or something. So I recognize things have changed. In the meantime, I've been out and dealing with insurance, which is also changing quite a bit. So let's define your terms. I wish I had a chair to put it up on. Indemnity insurance. For those of you that are old like me, we used to call that insurance because everybody had the same thing. You had health insurance and you sent in a bill. It wasn't even on a HCFA form. It was on, we had what were called super bills. Did you ever hear that? A super bill? And you just wrote whatever you want. Even Medicare, you could write sinusitis as a diagnosis. And they would pay, as long as you had a subluxation of C1, they would pay for sinusitis on scrap paper, and they would pay. That's gone. But indemnity insurance, also known as major medical, that was the good old days. They are gone. Personal injuries, when somebody got hurt, most often we know this with automobile crashes because they're absolutely insured. But if you're a slip fall in front of somebody's house or on a snowy sidewalk, that is a personal injury, and in many states, the patient can't pay you first and they get reimbursed. You have to wait until any insurance is settled. Workers' compensation, WC, workers' comp, workman's comp, or sometimes just comp. This is heavily regulated by the state, except ones that are regulated at a federal level, like the Veterans Administration, the Post Office, the Federal Justice Department. Sometimes you find out by the back way that they weren't covered by your regular workers' comp with the state. The federal government has very close rules. If you have a federal workers' comp, find my email address and let me walk you through it, because it's the same in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Participating, if you're participating, the insurance company has rules. Do you go by your rules or their rules? Their rules. You were listening earlier. Participation. Why should you? You get on a list of participating providers. They funnel people there. They speak well about you, and they believe in chiropractic. None of that's true. They will put you on a list. They will still treat you like a red-headed stepchild. So there are very few reasons to be jumping into the participate. There has to be a really good reason. Pennsylvania, Highmark, Blue Shield, they make it worthwhile for us. They really do, participation-wise. At a federal level, it's easier to appeal, and the rules are very liberal for Medicare. Page down. HMO, health maintenance, you have to go through the PCP. There's somebody over there with a throaty voice that says, "Are you the gatekeeper?" Everybody's seen that movie? They have seen that movie? Okay, good. Any movie with Bill Murray I can always have an allusion to. And the Andy Griffith movies, not as much. Notice how I said as much. So, when you go into an HMO, you don't do anything without the gatekeeper, the primary care physician. If they say chiropractic is very good and I believe in it, and they give you a script for examination and 2 treatments, that's about all you're going to get. So I never work with any HMOs. PPO is a preferred provider organization. What that is, if you can get on their network list and the patient pays less out of pocket if they go to you. Even if you're on the preferred provider organization, you generally get a lower reimbursement, especially as if you took cash and just gave them a receipt. MCO, Managed Care Organization, that's a different name for the PPO. Same abuse, same bruises, but it's got a different name, Managed Care Organization. ERISA, Employee Retirement Insurance Savings Account. That is regulated at a federal level. In Pennsylvania, if you cover a real doctor for a service like a 99202, you have to cover a chiropractor for the same service for a 99202. So if they pay $120 for an exam and you give the same exam, same way in Pennsylvania. But if it's an ERISA, it's federally regulated. Not only can they pay a chiropractor less because what do they know? They're not a real doctor. They might not pay for chiropractic at all. So if you got a really good plan coming in, you think this is a good insurance plan, I'm going to work with it, blah, 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 blah. If it's at an ERISA, they have all the power. They can do whatever they want. Always check that out. HCFA, Healthcare Financing Administration. Now it's called CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And they are the administrative arm of the federal government. Let's go to diagnosis codes. Do you ever use these in the clinic, ICDs? You do? All right. ICD 10. Now we're up to the International Classification of Disease. 10th division, and we're clinically modified. That's why it has a CM at the other. They're required for any insurance company that's HIPAA compliant. Any insurance company that writes insurance or sends checks across state lines. So pretty much it's all of them. Get used to using them. We're going to use them the rest of your life. They are very useful for you, and they're almost a shorthand in and of themselves. CPT, current procedure terminology. We still use the 4th edition. You're going to mostly use evaluation and management codes, 9920 blah, or 9921 blah. And what they do, they are the evaluation and management, how much decision making there is. It's where you get the information. Deductible is the first part of your medical expense. If you are a participating provider and you're accepting their insurance, before you get a check, the patient has to pay a certain deductible. It varies every year with Medicare. There's some kind of a method that they use to discern it, but in 2017, it's $183 that goes to the deductible. I'm a participating provider. I send in the claim form, they process it, and they tell me how much I'm allowed to collect from the patient. If I'm non-par, it doesn't matter. I already collected from the patient, and then they get reimbursed, the patient gets reimbursed by Medicare, the amount after the deductible. How did the patient get that done? Did they mail it in? By law, I have to send it in for the patient. Copay and coinsurance. This is very confusing. Somebody has a $30 copay. Every time they come in, they pay their first $30 to you. If the service is only $25, it's like not having insurance at all. So copay is a set amount every time they come in. Coinsurance is a percent. Medicare, it's a coinsurance. Medicare pays 80% of what they allow, and then the other 20% is responsibility of the patient, or they might have a comprehensive plan that takes care of that other 20%. So that'll vary. If I do a $100 service, Medicare would pay me $80, and then the wraparound, the comprehensive insurance, would pay the other $20. If you're with another insurance, then 80% comes from that insurance, 20% comes from the patient. Page down. Is that, am I the next one? Yep. HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. They're very well schooled in that. No, they're not? Just started. Oh, you're just starting that? Okay. It's going to be totally different when you come out into real practice. And there's going to be, every week, somebody online pitching you to update your HIPAA. And it's all online at the Office of Civil Rights. Just go to www.ocr, and they have all the rules you'll need for HIPAA. Don't do it until you're ready to go into office, because they do change things here and there. They do change things here and there. So no worries about that. Office of the Inspector General, those are the ones that kind of keep an eye on the Medicare system. So they investigate, and they find that 93% of the claims that were paid to chiropractors, when they checked the documentation, there was a shortfall. There was something wrong. Only 7% of the claims are paid correctly. I am trying to change that. I am trying to change that. The most recent, by the Office of Inspector General, it was only like 53% were wrong. But that's still high. That's still high. It's not that tough. We'll go through all that. They have a CCIED. It's Correct Coding Initiative. Correct Coding Initiative is when you bill for 2 or 3 or 4 things that should have all been in one procedure. This started with surgical procedures where I'm going to go in, I'm going to resect the bowel, but while I'm in there, I'm going to charge I'm going to take out the appendix while I'm in there. So I can charge for the bowel resection and separately charge for another surgery for taking out the appendix. Medicare said, you know, you can't do that. That's not right. And every doctor and every hospital and every school said, we've been doing it forever. We've always been able to charge full fee. So they got together and they did a correct coding initiative. So what they do is they rebundle things that possibly could be separate procedures. Medicare, you don't have to worry about it. But for workers' comp and PI, frequently, if you do manipulation on the same region that you do some soft tissue work, they will rebundle that back together. That's for the CCI edits. Page down. Protected health information. Know what that is with HIPAA. It'll be a little different when you get out into practice. Advanced beneficiary notice, the ABN. When I was talking about Medicare, this is kind of a waiver. This says, I know that this isn't going to be covered. Other insurance companies have a similar type, but they tend to be insurance companies that are covering for Medicare. But that's advanced beneficiary notice is what they use with Medicare. LOL, everybody knows what LOL is? Yeah, limitation O liability. When you did the paperwork wrong and you're expecting to get that $183 from the patient's deductible because they're Medicare, and Medicare comes back and says, you don't owe anything. There's a LOL, there's a limitation of liability. Dr. Smith had a CO16, contractual obligation. 16, I missed a space on that HCFA form. I can't collect the fee, and it's denied by Medicare. Who's going to fix that? I have to fix it. I've had doctors' offices send me, in all actuality, more than $600 of claims that were filled out wrong, and they couldn't get paid until they found out what they were doing wrong. Now, they could have gone through in Chapter 9 on how to fill out the HCFA form, but they sat on that and paid me much more than I'm worth, and they weren't allowed to say awesome or not so much. All that because they were too lazy to go online and make sure to do it. In the old days, I could get paid for a claim that I did wrong in 1975. If I fixed it and sent it back in 2013, I'd get the reimbursement for 1975, right when they started covering chiropractic. But with the Affordable Health Care Act, 365 days, and it's gone. If you don't have that claim in 365 days, the government keeps the money forever. So don't wait. I'm not sure. Don't wait. If it comes back and it's wrong, resubmit it right away. Know the right way. When it's gone, it is gone. Limitation of liability, you cannot collect it from the patient. Now she can't see the stop sign when she drives out. These are Medicare people. When she drives out, she goes right, can't see anything like that. She gets an explanation of benefits in the mail. It's number 8 font. We all know what number 8 font looks like, right? But it says, if you did not know or should have known that this was not a covered service and would be denied by Medicare, you do not have to pay your provider. If the provider has already collected a fee, you are due a refund. She'll be able to read that. She'll be able to read that. If you do the paperwork right, you don't have to worry about it. But LOL, limitation of liability. Limiting charge, Medicare only. No one else are you regulated. Medicare, you are. So that limiting charge is if you're in South Carolina and you give a chiropractic adjustment for an active treatment. By the way, what's the fee schedule for maintenance? There isn't any. What can you charge for maintenance? Whatever the market will allow. Once it's maintenance, there is no fee schedule. But in 98940, 1 to 2 regions, $29.98 in South Carolina. 98941, 3 to 4 regions that are medically necessary, $43.36. And 98942, $50.54. If it's 5 regions and they're medically necessary, $50 for that active treatment. This is not a bad reimbursement. They are very fair when it comes to chiropractors. Click. Modifiers. These are alphanumeric codes added to the CPT. So 98940 would have a modifier such as AT to show that it's an active treatment, or GY if it's not allowed for one reason or another. GA shows that an ABN was signed, blah, 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 blah. If you really want to know your stuff with insurance, Chiro code is absolutely the way to go. It is the handbook, the Bible. It is not admissible in court because even though they're a good authority, they're not the law. But up to going in court, I always stay close to Chiro code. Obligations to submit third-party pay, page down. Stay within the law, know your scope of practice, don't go outside of that. In my state, we have an injunctive procedures license. I never bothered with it to begin. All I was going to do is adjust. Well, I'll do some soft tissue here and soft tissue there. They started redefining what was adjunctive procedures. So I did get an injunctive procedures license in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania because who knows what they're going to do next. You would think as long as it makes a noise, but what if you're using an activator or an arthrostim or whatever? So I always recommend to go ahead and get that done. Know the code. Use only accurate coding strategies for what you do. Don't code for what pays the best. Code for what you really did. Code for what you really did. Click. I love this. This works. Document well. Document well. For many insurance companies, if it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. Medicare is the toughest. If you can document for Medicare, you can do them all. When you get to workers' comp and PI, and I would love to come down and do some PI, maybe a little bit of workers' comp. Show you how to document for that. When you go to court, you are golden. And I love to go to court. And I haven't gone in about 7 years because they all know who I'm at in every county. Now, I'll be called in as an expert witness for somebody else's case, but never on my own, not in the last 7 years on my own. I want you to be the same way because there's nobody here that can't be the same way. Really, that's the truth. Insurance coverages, most don't cover maintenance care. Click. The other click. The other page down. Did it move? Okay. Policies vary. It's more disease care than anything else. Go through, get the administrative information. Medicare patients, there's an advanced beneficiary notice. We're going to go through that later on. At one time, you could just call and get the benefits from the insurance company, but now with HIPAA and things like that, it's a lot more difficult than what it used to be. Page down. Another page down. Important addresses you're going to need. For you to practice, you're going to need an NPI number. And so you have to go to the enumerator, which is one step below the head beagle. NPPES, and then you will be allowed into the Medicare system, and that is the springboard for so many of the others. If you need, there's other Medicare providers, and that's another story, but there's a railroad Medicare which is administered by Palmetto GBA for railroad retirees because they had enough political clout, they weren't included in the Social Security system during the Depression, during the Roosevelt years. And the same thing, the coal miners had a union so strong that they defied Franklin Roosevelt. And what's special about those two funds? They're not broke. They pay us more, and they're not broke. They are flush with cash because they did not spend their cash reserves on hilariously ineffective social programs. So it's still there. They actually pay more than the regular, than the governmental Medicare. ICDA codes, you guys know about that. Click. Click. Primary diagnosis, that's the most important one to use. For Medicare, it's always an M99.0 blah. It is a segmental and somatic dysfunction. By definition, it doesn't say subluxation, but that's what it means because it has an effect, a somatic effect. Secondary diagnosis, that's accompanying conditions. The local coverage determination for Medicare, they tell you, here's the list, a small list of primary, here's a big long list of secondary, but there's also a tertiary. So if there's a complicating or an aggravating factor. So if I have a subluxation and a low back pain, and by the way, there's a spina bifida occulta at L5, is that going to make that vertebra stronger or weaker? I'm going to list the SBO as a complicating factor. What if there's a spondylolisthesis there? What if there's sacralization or lumbarization? What if there's spinal stenosis? Will that take, even though Medicare says 30 treatments in a year, do you think it might take 35? So does an administrative law judge. That's why they always find in my favor. What if there's a scoliosis? Put that not as the primary, but that's an aggravating. Now, scoliosis, stenosis, spina bifida occulta, all those are on the sheet of what we pay for Medicare, but Parkinson's disease is not. If they have a subluxation, a valid secondary diagnosis in Parkinson's, are they going to take longer to heal or less time to heal? Even though it's not on the list of what you're allowed to use, you can put Parkinson's in as a tertiary, and the administrative law judge is going to say, yeah, that makes sense. Spastic paralysis close to the spine, that makes perfect sense to me. So the ICD-10 codes actually keep you closer to what you're doing, and they make it an easy way to shorthand what you're doing in the chart. Go ahead and click. They vary on the condition. Change as the patient's condition changes. If they were in a crash, for Medicare patients, specific requirement for primaries, they go in box 21 of the HCFA. You don't have to worry about that. Click. For all other insurance companies, do not use, click. Oh, wait. Did I go too far? Yeah, you guys are following along anyway. All other insurances, non-subluxation code. Do not have a subluxation as the first for anything other than Medicare. They will think that it's maintenance because your primary focus is subluxation. Shouldn't it be? But for them to pay for it, they want a symptom first. Now, there's a family of codes for strain and vehicular causes in there as well in the S codes and the V codes. I use those a lot for workers' comp and for PI. When you get out in it, I want you to be able to use them when you get out into practice and are seeing those kind of cases. You're not going to see them in here, but I need you to be prepared out there. Change as the change goes on, and don't be afraid to look in the local coverage determination, Medicare coverage determination to know what the codes that they allow for. CPT codes, click. That's what you put on the HCFA form. You're mostly going to be using evaluation and management and treatment codes. There's some modifiers to those. Raise your hand if you are familiar with 98940 and what it means. All right, I got one, I got two. All right, I'm not going to go through them. You'll get there when you get there, but if it's 1 to 2 regions of medically necessary, that's 98940. If it's medically necessary and it's Medicare, it's 98940 AT for active treatment. How do they know it's AT? Because we have a modifier there. For everyone else in the universe, they use an S code, S8990 for maintenance. But Medicare is different. Go ahead and page down. So a modifier that on an evaluation and management, 99202. Let's say we have, that's a new patient, very simple, very uncomplicated, 99202, because that's an evaluation and management code. But I'm doing something else that day, and I want this 99202 to be set aside and different from any treatment. I'll put a 25 code. That means don't rebundle it in the correct coding initiative. 59, if it's other than an evaluation and management code. Let's say treatment codes. Don't combine them because I did the soft tissue on one region and the manipulation on another region. Click. 26, when you do radiographic workup, if you take the x-rays and you charge $72,100 for a lumbar set of films, that means you already wrote up a report on it. If you didn't write up a report, you get paid less because it's $72,100 TC for technical component. But if you just looked at the x-rays and they were taken by someone else, you can charge for the report. So that's a 26. I will tell you that take your own x-rays and do the report. If you're taking your own x-rays, make sure that you do a report and just have everything that's on that film that you see. For Medicare, make sure that you put in the conclusions that there is an acute subluxation or if there is a chronic subluxation. If there's no subluxation, you're not going to be billing Medicare anyway. Medicare has their own special modifiers, AT for active treatment, page down. Did you get two? Yeah, you did, as a matter of fact. She's developing Parkinson's, I think. M53.27. GY, you got it. This is to be used for item or service statutorily excluded. If you're from West Virginia, it's the other statutorily. You can actually, you can figure these out. G for a government modifier. Y for why do they treat us so shabbily? They require an x-ray, but they're not going to pay for it. So put a GY. It's not covered. Have them sign the ABN. Oh, wait a minute. No. If it's statutorily non-covered, Medicare assumes everybody knows that. So you don't have to have them sign the release, the advanced beneficiary notice. GY, if they want it sent in, you don't have to. But if they want it sent in, you can send it in case it goes to their other insurer. GA, only to be used by Medicare. G for government, A for an advanced beneficiary notice. It's usually covered. It might not be this time, so you're going to have them sign the ABN. After 27 visits, that's what I do. Or one time a year, once you turn them over to maintenance, have them sign an ABN that says, I understand this is maintenance, and it's not covered. And I also understand there's no fee schedule, so I get to pay your full fee. That's what the GA modifier is for. GZ only to be used by Medicare. You think it's not going to be covered, but you forgot to have an ABN signed. So when it's denied, is it going to say, you should have to pay Dr. Smith for this because it's not a covered service? Or is it going to say, due to limitation of liability, you don't have to pay Dr. Smith. And if you did, he owes you a refund. That's what it'll say. So make sure that you have it signed at the right time for the modifiers, the GZs and the GYs. Limitation of liability. Pretty much, click, 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 put it all together. Once you get used to working with it, it is not such the burden that it starts out to be. Make sure of your LCDs. When I started doing this, I was just trying to get people to use computers, believe it or not. I was just trying to get them to use computers and print up the HCFA forms. Make sure of the PI law and the workers' comp law in your state. I know it so well. Act 6 of 1990, I've testified in court so often. Act 96, no, Act 41 of 1993 for the workers' comp law. These laws are designed, they're predominantly on your side. Most legislators want to side with the consumer. The insurance companies are the bad guys. But if the insurance company pushes you around and you don't do anything about it, then they get away with it. So don't let them get away with it. Don't let them get away with it. Page down, page down. Chiro Code Desk Book is the Bible to go to. But if you are going to court over a coding issue or whether or not you should be paid for this type of service, absolutely, absolutely go to the original source, like the AMA's CPT terminology book or the ICD-10 coding book put out by CMS.